Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Cramer. Today on Squawk Pod, make money in any market. Jim Kramer, no relation, on what's hot in 2025.
Booyah.
Booyah.
What he's learned about investors in decades of talking to them in any market at any age.
They've given up. They think that their parents are always going to be richer than we are. I lived in a generation where I presumed I was going to be richer than my parents.
New York City's mayoral race down a candidate, but will it matter?
Because right now, this is not really a race.
The sitting mayor is out. The Democratic Socialist is leading in the polls. A voice of the business community, Kathryn Wylde from the Partnership for New York, on the state of the race.
We're a city of leaders in New York. The mayor is only one of those.
Plus, video game leader Electronic Arts going private in a $55 billion deal. And the government shutdown clock down to less than 2 days. Emily Wilkins reports.
We've seen some horse trading, right? We've seen some agreements. We've seen some back and forth. We just haven't seen that this time.
It's Monday, September 29th. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick along with Andrew Ross Sorkin. Welcome back.
Thank you. Joe's off. We're all getting a cold.
Yeah,
I think it's cold season.
It is.
It's a sore throat. It's like knives in the throat. Not now. I got it. It's over with. I'm better now. But that was my experience.
Well, I'm sorry for your extended illness, but we're glad to have you back.
And I hope nobody else gets it.
Yeah.
So. Meantime, President Trump expected to meet with the top 4 congressional leaders of the White House today as D.C. preparing now for a government shutdown that it's going to begin on Wednesday. That's absent a deal. The president canceling a meeting with Democratic leaders last Thursday. In an interview yesterday with NBC News, President Trump warning of potential widespread federal layoffs if there's a shutdown, with some being permanent. Typically, government workers are furloughed. According to a document posted to the Department of Homeland Security's website, tariff collection will likely continue during a shutdown. But regular economic data releases from the government would be at risk, including this Friday's jobs report. We're paying a lot of attention to that and, this.
We've been watching shares of Electronic Arts this morning. Those shares jumping 15% on Friday following a Wall Street Journal report saying that the video game maker is nearing a roughly $50 billion deal to go private. The report said that investors, including Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund and Silver Lake, could announce the deal as soon as this week. A source familiar with the matter said that Jared Kushner's Affinity Partners is another participating investor. At this reported price, that deal would be the largest leveraged buyout in Wall Street history.
It's pretty interesting stuff.
It is.
EA, of course, had been something that this company, parent company of this company, had tried at one point to buy and thought about merging with. So it's interesting.
The stock is up about 30% for the year to date.
It is. It had struggled, by the way, because there had been real concerns about what's possible in this mobile universe and how people are playing games these days.
And some comments from a key Fed official already this morning, speaking with Squawk Box Europe. Cleveland Fed President Beth Hammack said that she's still concerned about inflation. Hammack will be a Fed voting member next year.
I continue to be worried about where we are from an inflation perspective. We've been missing our mandate on the inflation side, our objective of 2% for more than 4.5 years. When I balance those two sides of our mandate, I think we really need to maintain a restrictive stance of policy so that we can get inflation back down to our goal.
Hammack adding that she has one of the higher estimates of neutral when it comes to interest rates and that the Fed is only a short distance away from hitting her target. Separately on the Fed, President Trump taking another shot at Jay Powell over the weekend. Saturday afternoon on Truth Social, the president posted this cartoon showing him firing the Fed chair.
Meantime, New York City Mayor Eric Adams announcing he's dropping out officially of his third-party bid for reelection. This now narrows the field for November's election and puts the spotlight on a race between Democratic mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani and former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Mamdani is a Democratic socialist. He won the city's primary, of course, back in June. He's way ahead in the polls. Adams did not endorse anyone in a 9-minute video he posted on X, but appeared to swipe at him by saying extremism is growing in our politics. For his part, Mamdani said in a video on social media that he's looking forward to beating Cuomo in November after beating him in the primary. Despite dropping out, Adams' name, though, is still going to be on official ballots since he left the race after a deadline to print them. So that's going to create its own conundrum. And then apparently there were parts of the transcript, part of the video that wasn't shown, where he called Cuomo a liar and a snake. And
no love lost there, right?
But then didn't publish that.
Yeah.
And so now there's a question about, is there something going on behind the scenes where he's ultimately going to endorse him? Is this all just too late?
Cuomo said some nice things to him about it, but it may or may not matter because if the most recent polling shows Mamdani at about 45%, Cuomo at 25%, but Adams only had 8%. So even if he got all of the Adams vote, it would still be a bit of a stretch, I suppose. I think Sliwa is still polling the Republican candidate at about 13%. So a lot of questions.
So the question is, if Sliwa were to drop out, but he says he won't.
Yeah.
Then is there an actual race? Because right now this is not really a race.
No. Yeah. And I think it's further complicated by the idea that he dropped out after the ability to take his name off the ballot. So
people are going to get confused when they get there and everything else. Kathy Wylde is going to be with us in just a little bit. Of course, runs the New York City Partnership, which represents all the big businesses in New York, which for the most part are for Cuomo, I think, at this point, and against Mamdani, but they seem to be in the losing camp, and that also seems to be almost helping Mamdani.
Right.
Less than 2 days remain before the government shuts down. Congressional leaders will meet with the president today, and Emily Wilkins joins us from Washington this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Andrew. Yeah, President Trump meeting with congressional leaders 3 p.m. today. The goal, of course, is to try to avoid a government shutdown, but that kind of doesn't seem like it might happen because both sides are really as dug in as ever. The White House told NBC in a statement yesterday that the president is meeting with Democrat leaders at their request to give them an opportunity to commit to common sense and vote for a clean CR to keep the government open, as they have previously done 13 times. Meanwhile, Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer told Meet the Press yesterday that the meeting is only the first step and they need serious negotiation.
The meeting is a first step, but only a first step. We need a serious negotiation. So if they're serious, I'm hopeful we can get something real done.
Now, Democrats are asking for a number of things, including extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits, reversing cuts to Medicaid and other health care provisions that were a part of that Trump mega bill, and require the president to spend the money that Congress approves for programs and agencies. Now, most of that wish list has strong GOP opposition. It's very unlikely to happen. But Senate Majority Leader John Thune also said on Meet the Press over the weekend that he does believe there could be a path forward on extending some of the tax credits, but not until after they deal with this shutdown.
Keep the government open, let's fund the government, and then let's have the conversation about the premium tax credits. It's a fairly straightforward argument that we're making.
Now, congressional Republicans are split on whether to extend the tax credits. Some more moderate members are worried about that increased cost on Americans if they expire, but others note that extending them is going to add hundreds of billions to the debt. So there's no consensus there. The Senate is expected to return to town this afternoon, but right now there are no votes that are scheduled on that stopgap measure. This means that the next time we see votes could be less than 24 hours before the deadline. Guys?
Okay, so how do you handicap it?
I mean, at this point, usually at this point, Andrew, we've seen some horse trading, right? We've seen some agreements. We've seen some back and forth. We just haven't seen that this time. And that has really got everyone in D.C. thinking that it's going to be very difficult for them to walk out of the White House today and say, hey, guys, we have an agreement. Now, of course, it does seem like there could be a path forward with something on this Affordable Care Act. But at this point, it does seem likely that both sides do believe that they could benefit potentially from a shutdown. Of course, this is always the other thing that comes up, the messaging war, the who's going to get blamed. Democrats are just very confident at this point that if they just keep focusing on health care, that they can say, hey, go back to their constituents and say, hey, we put up a fight, we pushed for what we wanted. The question is, what can they possibly get out of this?
So you think this movie could end differently? This is one of the first times it would end differently in a very, very long time.
Absolutely, Andrew. And look, I mean, I don't know what's exactly going to happen at this White House meeting today. I think the fact that they have now called a meeting after they canceled that one last week shows that there's at least some ability to have a discussion. And you have seen both Thune and Mike Johnson. They haven't completely said absolutely not to extending these Affordable Care Act tax credits. They've both kind of said, look, we can have this discussion. We just need to have it after we figure this out. And so what I'm interested to see is if they come out of the White House and they say, look, we are going to work together to try to do something on these tax credits, maybe not a clean extension, maybe an extension with certain limits on it. Is that enough for Schumer and Jeffries to go back to Democrats and say, hey, we got a victory here, we held our ground, and now we're going to be voting for this when it comes up either tonight or tomorrow?
Okay, Emily, we'll keep our eyes. This is it's one of those movies that doesn't usually end until literally the clock strikes midnight. So thank you. We'll be talking to you a lot.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, who will run America's largest city? Big Apple Mayor Eric Adams has ended his reelection bid, narrowing the field to former Governor Andrew Cuomo, the Democratic nominee Zoran Mamdani, and Republican Curtis Sliwa. Kathy Wylde of the Partnership for New York City says it's not a clear route to victory for any of the candidates.
I think the business community is very split, all over the map.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Today with Becky Quick and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Okay, now an update on the race for New York City Mayor. Yesterday, of course, Eric Adams announcing he's dropping his bid for re-election. Joining us right now is Kathy Wylde. She's the president and CEO of the Partnership for New York City. I think under your breath, you'd say you've been wanting this to happen for quite some time. Maybe not under your breath.
Not at all. No, I just think we've been tortured for the last couple of years as the mayor has gone through what is really a tragedy for New York City. You know, on an objective basis, he's done a very good job in terms of his administration pushing through a lot of important things. They have reduced crime. The shooting rates are way down. They have been very successful with sanitation, housing, et cetera.
So the business community now, but I think where I was going with this is the argument has been that I think you don't like Zoran Mamdani for the most part, and that you'd like to find an alternative. Now that Adams is out, how do you think it really changes the calculus, if at all, for Cuomo's bid?
Well, if you mean in terms of the business community, that's one thing. I think that they're very concerned about Mamdani's policy positions, the things he has focused on in the past and to some extent in the campaign. He has made an effort since the primary election, since winning the primary election handily, to meet with a lot of business people, and he's provided some reassurance that he's somebody who will.
Do you think the business community is more comfortable with him now?
I think it's all over the map. There are some members of the business community that have met him and feel that he's a smart guy who will want to be successful, so they're hopeful. But I think the main point is that it's really up to the voters, not the business community. We still live in a democracy.
Well, so how much of this is a worry, though, about if the New York City Partnership is too far out there saying, you know what, we're not into socialism. We don't like socialism. We don't like this mayor. We don't want him to be the guy. That backfires. That the city says, well, and this you hear people say, well, if the real estate guys and the business community don't like him, we like him.
Something must be good, right?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. No, I think it's. I think the idea of the whole thought that money, raising super PAC money, et cetera, to go after somebody is. I think the public objects to that. I think that backfires. I don't think most of the business community has not spoken out one way or the other on this issue. And I think it's because they are going to go with the will of the voters, and we have to work with whoever is mayor.
But I will tell you, at least privately, the people that I talk to in the business community, almost to a man, to a woman, say they have a particular view, which is that they don't want Mamdani to win. They may be a toss-up as to Adams or Cuomo or something else, but they sort of have a singular focus about that, and privately are telling each other this is no good, and they want to somehow see if they can affect it, but they don't know how.
Right, and in fact, the way they can affect it is go to the polls and vote, and then there'll be one vote among many.
What do you think, though, between, you still have Sliwa in there.
Yes.
Do you think that he's going to drop out?
I do not.
You do not?
I don't think so.
So do you think then this changes the dynamic at all, what happened yesterday?
I don't think it's, I think what it does is allows us to go back to focusing on the issues, rather than the tactics and the will he or won't he, and the mechanics of if we get everybody out, who can win. But I think that's been unhealthy. I think we ought to be focused on the issues. I mean, the big challenges facing the city are, number one, affordability in general, that's especially housing and child care. That's what we should be talking about, how you're going to solve the problem.
Does Mamdani's solution to that make sense to you? The idea of affordability by saying we're going to do more rent control, extend and expand that?
It's certainly an oversimplification of what's required. Obviously, rents are a big part of the issue, and he has nuanced his position by saying in order to freeze the rents, I know we have to reduce costs, and he is supporting tax reform, real estate tax reform, to reduce costs. So those conversations are going on. Again, I think the solutions that are proposed, the problems that are being addressed, the fact that we're the most expensive city in America, that we're having more and more difficulty with having people being able to afford to live here, attracting young people here, those are the big issues. It's the how you solve those issues that the candidates disagree on.
Do you worry that the people who have the most means will be chased out of the city if Mamdani is there and is successful in some of the things that he wants to put forth? And if you lose that tax base, how do you pay for it?
Well, I think they're actually being chased out now for a few years. Yeah. Ever since SALT, we lost the deductibility from federal taxes, of state and local taxes. Mm-hmm. We're the highest tax city. There was a study that just came out from the Citizens Budget Commission that shows that our share of millionaires is decreasing nationally, while Florida and Texas are going up.
In terms of the conversation that at least I'm hearing among the business community that are concerned about Mamdani, the focus seems to be on safety and security and the police. What is he going to do with the police?
Yeah.
Is he going to keep Tish? Is he not? Is he going to move money around so that
he could provide a lot of relief if he said, I'm going to keep Jessie Tish as police commissioner, because there's great confidence in her and in her job.
So you hear that?
Yes.
You hear references to this website that refers to raising taxes, but not just raising taxes, he says, on white neighborhoods specifically. I mean, it's sort of an interesting thing to say that as directly as he does when it comes to sort of, and again, he's referring to neighborhoods, but there's sort of he spells it out as a racial issue to some degree, or at least some people see that. And then there's the Bibi Netanyahu stuff about when he says that he's going to have him arrested by the NYPD, which is of course completely against federal law. And I think there's a lot of people who are Jewish in this city, irrespective of your views about Israel and this and that, who say that it sends a signal that there's something that there's a anti-Semitic view that's being espoused underneath all of this.
Yeah, and that is the single biggest issue, I think.
You think that is?
Absolutely.
That or the police?
No, I think the anti-Semitic view. New York is a city that has a long history relationship with Israel. Our investors funded the whole startup nation, the building of Israel, et cetera. I think that's a big issue.
So here's the question. To the extent that you guys are now behind Cuomo, what does he actually have to do to win? What do you think that, is there and I don't know if you're saying you're probably not behind Cuomo, but I think you really are.
You meaning
what
the business community?
The business community.
No, I think the business community is very split all over the map. I mean, last week, several business leaders, one of our vice chairman, Kevin Ryan, leader in the tech community, came out saying he was going to work with Mamdani on trying to make sure he gets the best possible results if he's elected. So business, particularly public corporations, does not participate in local politics in a visible way because you can't win. Your employees their young employees are definitely Mamdani people for these companies. So the business leaders are not taking that kind of position. In addition, the whole financial industry, which is the largest sector of our economy, can't contribute because of federal regulations that prohibit financial contributions by financial advisors to state and local politicians. So they basically are on the sidelines because they can't donate. So the business community, I think it's unfortunate and that we ought to be trying to fix this, but the business community really is not that engaged on the politics of the issue. They're very worried about the substance of the issues and what a next mayor will want to do, whether it will be productive. But I always say, we're a city of leaders in New York. The mayor is only one of those. We have not only checks and balances in government with the city council, the governor, et cetera, right, but we've got, we have leaders in every sector, in business, right, in culture, and et cetera. So I don't think who is mayor is ultimately going to determine the fate of New York City. We're going to have to work harder to make sure that that is the case. We're going to have to depend on the support of the governor and others to make sure that is the case. But I think, I don't know what's going to happen in the election, but I don't think that I think New York City has proven that we're highly resilient, that we have survived plenty of less than adequate mayors. We've survived lots of bad public policies. I think we'll be successful moving forward.
Okay. Kathy, it's great to see you. Thank you. And we got a massive deal just crossing the tape. A deal that we told you about earlier. It is now official. Electronic Arts being taken private by PIF, Silver Lake, also Affinity Partners for $55 billion. It would mark the largest private equity buyout in history. Stockholders will receive $210 per share in cash. That would represent about a 25% premium to the share price before the deal rumors were reported. Company CEO Andrew Wilson will continue to lead the company. The transaction expected to close in the first quarter of 2027, and we're going to keep our eyes on what happens next with this transaction. Still, obviously, lots of questions that people are going to have about how it's all going to work. They say it's going to close Q1 of 27, so there's still lots of things that need to take place between now and then. But as we said, you have this combination of Silver Lake, PIF. I should mention PIF is rolling over. They have about a 10% stake currently in the company, 9.9% stake, and they're going to roll that existing stake into the new deal as well. So some interesting dynamics taking place in terms of what that deal looks like and who is part of it. Of course, Jared Kushner runs Affinity Partners. People have looked at that as an interesting sort of element to all of this as well.
And by the way, this is a cash deal. EA stockholders would get $210 a share. Stocks right now, even after that big jump, trading just below $205, and I guess that leads to to whether or not they think that this will go through the way you could play.
I honestly, looking at that, I think we're literally, because there's still a year
to go,
year and a half out before you're going to be able to get the money. I think that's this is representative. You know, you would think if you thought there was another party that could emerge, maybe the number would get even higher. Yeah. But we're going to keep our eyes, as I said, on that story, and it's an interesting one. They believe that they can do a lot of work behind the scenes in private, effectively, that they couldn't do in the public markets in terms of shifting away to some degree from the console business and more towards the mobile business. But to do that would take some costs and maybe take some revenue on a temporary basis. So we'll see.
Up next on Squawk Pod, CNBC's very own Jim Cramer. His new book, How to Make Money in Any Market, encourages everyone to invest, and investing is more accessible than ever.
20 years ago, it wasn't possible for the individual to get the same information that a professional could. Now, because of artificial intelligence, it's the same.
This is Squawk Pod.
Stand Andrew by in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Up and Andrew. Cue. Is Mike.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Andrew Sorkin along with Becky. Quick, Joe is off today.
Our next guest is a dear friend and a best-selling author.
Booyah.
And of course,
Booyah.
long-term Squawk Box guy, long-term CNBC guy, Jim Cramer.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I've known you both for a lot longer than your shows begin, but I love the show, and you know the 30th was one of the greatest parties. Congratulations to you, because you have a book a long time in the making that I can't wait to read. I hope I can get a chance to do so.
Yes, sir.
Fascinating, 1929. I remember when you and I went back from the days of Larry Kudlow.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it was the
I remember doing something even before that bullseye. Do you remember? We were kind of like bickering back and forth on set.
Well, look, I tried to hire you
but it
for
was part of it.
TheStreet.com 100 times. I said if I got her for TheStreet.com, we would be successful,
We
and I
go way
didn't.
back.
So I hired her to be Kudlow's backup, and wow, what a
Jim
star!
has always been
Just
there.
a
This
star.
is
Star.
Bullseye. This is back in the day. Dylan Radigan doing Bullseye, right?
Oh,
Even before
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Jim and I used to play around the edges with that.
Well,
But
I
you're right.
mean,
It
we
was
would disagree,
TheStreet.com. But we did it it was a shtick. We did it on purpose.
It was just we had to develop the disagreement. We couldn't really have it, so it was all faux.
Yeah. But it was all part of Heat. But I want to talk about why you're here today.
Sure.
I don't want them to roll past this. His new book is out tomorrow. It's called How to Make Money in Any Market. Make sure you go get this book. This is for anybody who wants to figure out what they should be doing. And Jim, this is a different book for you.
Yes, well, it's a how-to book, tough category. Yep. But no, let's say someone mentions a stock here, okay? Yep. And a person at home says, you know what, I want to know how to research that. I want to know if it's right. That's the process. I talk about how you observe your curiosity. Here's how you can look into it. Some of it is the fact that we now have ChatGPT and Perplexity. But a lot of it is just like, please invest right. And you can invest in individual stocks plus index funds, which is now somehow against the orthodoxy. So I find that when someone says, look, there's a change at the top in Barrick. We just had right now Mark Bristow just retired. Let's look into that. Maybe it's time to buy a gold stock. But then you see it's up 110. My rules say that's up too much. So we go through
These are general guidelines for doing it. And you're right, this comes as so much of the American investing dollars are going into passive index.
Right, and I'm trying to say, I know you want to invest wisely, as opposed to, I need you to stop buying index funds. It's the opposite. Have index. But I know you're curious about individual stocks, so you wouldn't be tuning in. So here's the right way to do it.
I want to know, if you wrote this book 20 years ago, would it be very different than today? Meaning, you think it's fundamentally changed how to examine and value shares in a world where the indexes are so important? So, like, if your stock is in an index, that seems to be helpful. If it's not, and could potentially be, that could be helpful. If it's never going to be, that will not be helpful.
Well, look, I think you raise a great point, which is that at what point would I have done this? And I would say, you know what, back then, you couldn't get the stuff you needed. I mean, can you imagine if you have Atkins on, who is a really fascinating guest. How about if you go 2 reports a year? That could be tougher, but I explain how to research it based on the conference calls. But 20 years ago, it wasn't possible for the individual to get the same information that a professional could. Now, because of artificial intelligence, it's the same.
So it's a great equalizer.
It is. I find it incredible. I mean, before I came out here today, I had to look up some things for the 9 o'clock show. I like to do more than one, but I wanted to compare a bunch of stocks. I wanted to compare Barrick with Agnico Eagle, which is another great gold stock. They come on all the time, and Newmont. So very quickly, I can do the comparison just like this before I come out, just in case, hey, Jim, what's new? And it's not necessarily what you would do, but on my 9 o'clock it would be. And I've got it. And I've got the different characteristics. And I have to check because it's so often incorrect. And that's the big problem.
So what is the answer to those things?
It's exactly they're all between 108% and 120%, in keeping with the fact that gold's at a record high.
Okay. One of the things you do, though, is you lay out and explain to people, if you're not in this game, you better be.
Yeah, well, I think that what's happened is people gave up. I find this new generation, and look, we can't discriminate against generations either. Gen Z plays a lot of stuff that I regard as being, let's say, one-trick pony. They'll like a...
What do you mean, meme stocks?
Yes, they love the meme stocks. Or one of the things that they do 0-day options, but they don't invest over time. And when I was living in my car, I put away $10 to $50 a month, and it ended up being a lot of money. And I just want people to invest because I don't want people to work and then die at their desk because it's so hard to save. They think it's hard. Right. They always think they've given up. They think that their parents are always going to be richer than we are. I lived in a generation where I presumed I was going to be richer than my parents.
But don't you think that part of what's happened
Your dad
here
did
is
pretty well.
did okay.
That generation is now trying to shoot for the moon, right? It's turned into less investing and maybe more of a speculation because
Totally.
they feel like the only way out is that.
But they can buy companies that they observe. I mean, they love Robinhood. They should have bought the darn stock. They use Apple every day. Don't listen to Jeffries, which says it's not doing that well. Go look at the lines that I posted in Osaka, in Tokyo. I mean, take a look at the lines here. Watch football this weekend.
The iPhone 17.
Exactly. How many ads did you? I mean, I don't know. I was inundated with ads. It was really painful. But I think half of them were for the 17. I'm not buying the 17. Verizon's buying it. T-Mobile's buying it.
Okay, what about all the folks, especially the younger people, who say that the future is crypto?
I say crypto's fine.
How do you value that? What is the sort of process with which you would use?
Well, I'm using it as insurance, and it's an insurance against the $37 trillion that we owe. Of course, we do have a government shutdown, but at least it's not connected to a deadline involving, refinancing for the government, which is really good. The government shutdown is not done at the same time as a possible cataclysm of not paying our bills. But I don't know. I think that crypto is. I'm not valuing it as fun. I'm valuing it as anti. What the younger people think is our country's problems. They may know that one.
Right.
But then again, maybe my generation never has to see it, and their generation is going to have to live with what happens.
When you talk about what the younger generation is involved in, I've talked to other investors who worry that it's into this, as you're saying, almost like a gambling mentality instead of a longer term. And so what do you do for longer term? Does that mean you can still play with some of these things and go after them, but you want to take some of your money and make sure it's there for the long haul?
Right. I want investing, not trading. I think that one of the things that we've made a mistake on is that we do it. Look, the propensity is to talk about buy, sell, hold because we have a lot of analysts on. But how about buy and hold or buy and homework? So how many times did people trade out of Apple because each launch was problematic? How about the incredible rush against what I regard as being the AI market that was great for Meta? It turned out to be great for Alphabet once they won the lawsuit. So I just think that there were so many opportunities right in your face. Right
now, you've talked about recently just this idea that there's two economies out there, right?
Yes.
You've got the AI and the tech one that is a booming economy. But on the other hand, you have a consumer that probably needs a little help.
I think the consumer does. And I saw the Fire Pal cartoon. I don't know. I mean, that's hard for me because he's a gentleman. He's worked really hard. Yeah. And I think that I don't want to ridicule a guy who's spent his life. Well, he had some private sector, but yeah, there's two markets. And look at this First Brands. I mean, when you look at it, the liabilities, if you look at ChatGPT, Perplex, whatever, the liabilities are between like 10 billion and 50 billion. Who the heck knows? But they were Anko, wipers, okay, auto light spark plugs. These are big Walmarts. We haven't heard from Walmart. But you want to know that's the American way for the consumer because that consumer is trying to keep their car running.
How do you think about, though, the AI boom in the idea that we're now getting into? We talked about vendor financing last week. When NVIDIA does this sort of massive deal with OpenAI, and I don't know if you saw Bill Gurley actually out online over the weekend saying this is when you get into a situation where it gets more complicated.
Who is going to go against Gurley? He's terrific. And what I would say is this. That was the one that really disappointed me because as long as we don't have vendor financing, it's very hard to be like Nortel. I have a piece this weekend for clubs. And it's very hard to have Lucent. Very hard to have Nortel, which ended up having very bad orders because it was all done with cash. This is the first one that's done with debt. And I think that they're going to continue to make contracts and continue. Look, this OpenAI, people think it's worth $1 trillion. But what does that mean, worth $1 trillion? Worth $1 trillion. I mean, and therefore they can be able to raise $500 billion. I mean, you need that Oracle. Right? We don't know how much Oracle's going to be. They're on the hook from OpenAI. Now, I don't agree that the $100 billion over time that Jensen Huang from NVIDIA is giving to OpenAI is necessarily a quid pro quo. I think that they've made it very clear that that's not. But I'm sure the skeptical people are going to say it is.
What do you think the larger question is? None of these guys are really making money right now. Now, part of that is because they continue to grow and they continue to keep investing in the business. Maybe if they stopped it,
none of the
large language models are actually making money.
NVIDIA
and so,
is.
here you have this situation where, but they're the ones who are effectively ordering the chips. They're the ones who need the data centers. They're the ones who need the energy. All of these, and they're making massive commitments without the cash on the other end.
Totally true. Now, like, Sam Altman said, there's a lot of demand, right? But I had the Joaquin Duato. Okay, he's the CEO of J&J. Yeah. They have the best cancer franchise, and the stock's doing. And they're doing nothing with these big guys. Why? Because the big guys are saying they're going to cure cancer, but why don't they work with the companies that are trying to cure cancer?
Right.
I find a lot of these companies are so busy building out that maybe they haven't even figured out what to do with it. Now, the new generation, okay, the Vera Rubin, has got reasoning. And reasoning is the real threat to us. Look at that Doug McMillon piece that we saw this weekend about Walmart. Yeah. He says everybody's job's going to change. Whose job's changing so far? I mean, all I know is that, yes, we could all be holograms, but I was called a hologram in 2012 by Elon Musk, and I'm not a hologram. But we could easily, some people could be replaced by people who are not people, because this news business doesn't make any money. Have you noticed that? Are you conversant with that?
Versant. I like how you slipped that in. Well done.
Conversant.
Like
I didn't say anything about versant. What, are you crazy?
Very quickly, Ed Yardeni had a piece out this morning, and it reminded me of your book, just because he said, look, this looks like the Roaring 20s, and things have been great since 2020, really, overall. Right. But your book is about how to make money in any market. What happens if that changes?
Well, I think
rules still stand.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, half of what I do is supposed to be index funded. We do have a Roaring 20 and then a crash, which I don't think so, because I can distinguish. Until that, what Gurley was saying, with the pseudo-vendor financing, I still believe that it's really possible for people to ride through a crash. It was possible to ride through 2000. It was possible to ride through 2008, provided you didn't trade out. And that's where Warren was so right. Yeah. Remember, he said, if you had held, you did fine. Now, people who needed their money in 2010, 2011, they got hurt. And you know better than anyone, because the book was so good.
Thank you.
The book was really good, man. I bet you 29 is going to be fabulous.
Well, we're trying.
Give me a villain. Give me a villain.
A villain?
Yeah, come on.
Oh, there's so many villains, but nobody goes to jail in 29 either.
Isn't it something? How about Fisher? How did he look?
I mean, Fisher, we're talking about Irving Fisher, the great professor. I mean, he didn't look so smart in the end.
No. Professor.
Not so smart.
You guys are smart. I love his show. I watch it every morning. Okay.
Well, we watch you every morning.
But I think you guys are sensational, and it is a delight to be here.
And we love having you, Joe.
I want you to come, obviously, on Mad Money. You'll be there.
God bless you. I will.
Give you a good chunk of time because you deserve it. You know, my wife watches the show, and she says, you know, I love these guys. She loves both of them. She thinks you guys are the absolute greatest. I don't like how much she likes you.
Thank you, Jim.
I know.
Well,
she likes your wife.
I love your wife.
Thank you, Lisa. Great.
Thank you.
Jim, again,
congratulations
on the book. It's called How to Make Money in Any Market.
Isn't it tough to still be promotional?
No.
Aren't you embarrassed a little?
No.
All right.
Go on Amazon right now and buy the book, folks.
Jim, thank you.
Thank you.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Love you. A new post out from President Trump about the New York mayoral race, which we've been talking about all morning. He said, self-proclaimed New York City communist Zohran Mamdani, who's running for mayor, will prove to be one of the best things to ever happen to our great Republican Party. He's going to have problems with Washington like no mayor in the history of our once great city. Remember, he needs the money from me as president in order to fulfill all of his fake communist promises. He won't be getting any of it. So what's the point of voting for him? This ideology has failed always for thousands of years. It will fail again, and that's guaranteed. President DJT issuing a warning to New Yorkers this morning. I have to tell you that I imagine that the folks who were planning to vote for Mamdani look at that kind of warning, and that doesn't talk them out of voting for him. In fact, it may help persuade more folks who, are worried about what's happening in Washington. Having said that, we've talked a lot on this set before about the fact that the National Guard has emerged in all these other cities, has not come to New York. I think one of the reasons for that, and it's pure conjecture, but it may very well be because Adams was in this role and he had this sort of weird relationship or special relationship, but unusual relationship with this president and what happens. And whether New Yorkers should be voting based on that. is an interesting concept unto itself.
Well, let me just look at some of the numbers on this. In fiscal year 2025, federal funds made up about 8.3% of the city's operating budget, including nearly $1.1 billion in pandemic-related funds. The funding comes through direct grants, competitive applications, formula-based allocations supporting programs like housing choice vouchers for low-income residents. In fact, the city receives billions of dollars through programs like the HUD tenant-based rental assistance program. Over $32 billion flows to the city's healthcare providers and insurers through programs like Medicaid. Although federal spending cuts do pose risk to that, infrastructure comes from that, education. So those are areas that would be, I don't know if the president can follow through on that, go through that, because the Congress is who controls the spending.
Well, that's the other question. Would Congress stand up and say,
no, we're not going to do that?
We're not going to do that.
I can't imagine Congress would support targeting certain areas, but I don't know if the president has other means and other ways of cutting certain programs. But that's what's at risk, 8.3% of the city's budget for fiscal 2025.
Right. Throwing a...
It's a closely watched race, we should say, beyond just the confines of New York City.
That's Squawk Pod for today. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern to get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears. Follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great Monday. It's a new week. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.